How many of you have been at the IFF stand at the Gulf Food Exhibition? How many? Please raise your hands. Have you experienced the future of food there yet? Yes. Okay, let's shout there. So I'm pleased to invite Karen Stanton, the Director of Global Marketing and Branding at IFF, to show us the future of food.
Thank you. So what if we could predict what it is we're going to be eating in the next 2, 5, or even 10 years' time? Now, none of us have a crystal ball. None of us are actually able to predict exactly right, but we have signs and we have signals and things which consumers are showing us that I don't believe are actually just interesting, but essential and crucial for us as an entire industry to be able to look at and start to prepare for innovation for the future. Because it isn't just about some interesting facts, but it's about keeping on the cutting edge. It's about staying relevant, and it's about staying true to what consumers are looking for. Because if we don't stay relevant, if we don't look at the signs and the signals, we will become irrelevant. It is inevitable. So, it isn't also just a matter of looking at the short-term trends. Oh, what flavor is cool? What flavor is hot? What are the interesting things which are happening right now? All of that is great. But it's crucial that we look even further beyond that. What are the signs and signals that are going to happen in 5 years or even 10 years' time? It's a bit difficult for us to predict too far beyond 10 years because that's a long way away and things tend to shift and change. But it's really important that we start to look beyond just what is happening now and what the trends are at this moment in time. So I'm going to share with you 5 key things today, or 5 signals that we see, and put it forward as a bit of a challenge to us as an entire industry. And I'm challenging ourselves as well, because this isn't just a challenge for us as IFF, as an organization, but for all of us to prepare and get ready for the consumer of the future. How are you looking at consumers? How are you listening to them? Are you listening on social media? Are we? Because these things are critical if we're going to be able to prepare for what is to come. So I'm going to start with the first one, and I couldn't have asked for some better presenters to move before me on this particular topic of trust and transparency and the blockchain as well, because there is a big dilemma right now with consumers in terms of trust. So what if our food could speak? What if the tuna could tell us the story of where it had been? Or the food that you are buying in the supermarket could tell you the journey it had taken all the way from bait to plate. Thank you very much for that lead-in. What if it could speak? There is a huge amount of distrust happening with consumers right now across the entire food industry. And I'm not just talking about the food industry either. Across many industries and institutions, the decline of trust is a very big issue. There are many examples of where this has actually happened. How many of you, little show of hands, how many of you have ridden in an Uber before? 1 or 2 of you, okay. Now, how many of you grew up with your parents saying to you, never get in a car with a stranger? Also 1 or 2 of you. This has completely changed the trust equation for the consumer. Completely changed, because what's happened is we've shifted from what we would call institutional trust to distributed trust, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, how many of you have been a host or a guest on Airbnb? Also 1 or 2 of you, but many of you were taught not to go into homes with strangers, correct? So we've really changed the entire trust equation. We've moved towards a more reputation-based trust. So how many of you, before you book into a hotel, maybe even for this conference, took a look on TripAdvisor? And so, how did this hotel rate? Where should I be staying? What's close by? What are the facilities that they have? You're looking not at what the website necessarily for the hotel is saying, but you're looking at what other guests are saying. Because you trust them more. They have had the experience, because maybe the hotel is going to give you a little bit of a biased view on what their facilities are. So trust has shifted completely. I'm going to give you another example. This is a company called BlaBlaCar. It's risen in the last couple of years. So for my friends in the room from Turkey, you can actually tap into this particular platform. Now, this isn't just about reputation, it's also about preference. So let's say, for example, you wanted to take a trip from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. Now, you didn't want to take your car, let's say. Now, it's a little bit difficult to take an Uber or a taxi, or maybe it's too expensive, and so you tap into BlaBlaCar. You go onto the platform, and you say, well, who else is driving from Dubai to Abu Dhabi? And you can not only jump in the car or rent a seat in somebody's car, but you can find out what kind of person, what kind of car, and also what kind of conversation you will have along the way. One blah means, I don't want to talk to you the entire way. It's going to be a quiet car ride. Blah blah means, yeah, there's going to be a nice little bit of chit chat. And blah 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 means, I am not going to stop talking the entire way from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. And I can get in a car with the type of experience that I like, not just their reputation. So organizations and platforms like this are rising up and sharing with us not just about reputation, but about preference and what it is that I'm looking for as an experience as a consumer. So take a look at BlaBlaCar. Maybe next time you want to drive somewhere. So this shift in trust, and I'll share with you a bit about what that looks like, is it started out, let's say in the 1800s, when we were part of more tribes and communities. And let's say I was in a tribe or in a community with the first two tables here in the room. What we would have is local trust. Now, if I wanted to borrow money from somebody, and let's say I borrowed money from somebody from this table, and let's say I didn't pay that back, I have a reputation within our tribe of being untrustworthy, and you all know it, and you probably wouldn't lend me money ever again. Now, what happened as we industrialized societies in the 1900s is we moved towards something called institutional trust. Institutional trust is where we put our trust in banks, in letters of understanding, in insurance and agreements. And we outsourced the trust. Now, what happens as trust starts to decline in things like banks, in food systems, in processes, is that we've moved now towards something called distributed trust, where we trust each other more than we trust necessarily the institutions or the big companies. And technology has enabled us to do that because we can now connect online with people who think just like us. It's a very, very different world of trust that is now much more connected to people that I feel are more like me than the big institutions who I don't necessarily trust. So this shift in trust has meant very, very different things for us in the food industry as well. And now, based on some research that we've been doing, is we trust our friends and family far more. In fact, probably almost 3 times as much as big food companies. And poor old Gwyneth Paltrow, if you know who she is, kind of comes at the end of the equation. So trust is at an all-time low. How many of you here know what these, I'm pretty sure many of you were at a food tech summit. You guys know what dihydrogen monoxide is? Who can help me here? Really? Exactly, it's water. It's water, and yet for some products, there's a legal requirement to put this word on the packaging. And no wonder consumers are confused. No wonder they're skeptical. No wonder they're worried about the ingredients that we're placing in their food products. Or what about the bottom one? I can't even pronounce this one. Anybody know what it is? Nobody? It's the technical term for B12. Why can't we be putting B12 on the pack? Why do we need to have regulatory that is so incredibly tight that consumers are now rejecting products based on that? We're confusing them. So I'm going to run a little exercise here. 3 products. I want you to tell me which one is the most healthy. All right, I'm going to take a little poll here, just a show of hands. So you can just take a really brief look at these 3 labels. Let's say they're labels on some packaging. And make a little choice which one you think based on just reading the ingredients pack, because this is what consumers are doing more and more. So who's with me on this first one? Show of hands. Is this the most healthy? Okay, all right. What about the middle one? Oh, a few more. All right. I wonder what it is about that one that you're choosing. And the final one. Oh, okay, there's 3 of you. You guys have seen this before, I'm sure. But these are the products. And if we had to label according to the regulatory specifications for what was in a banana, this is what we would be showing. We're scaring consumers. We're giving them cause for distrust. And this is what we need to shift. And it's a call for us as an entire industry to be able to move and shape where we are going with the foods that we're putting on the market. Now, there's a number of companies who are doing this, and they're doing it in an incredibly clever way. This organization, the RX Bar, is putting the ingredients label on the front of the pack. Imagine that. It's not even on the back, it's on the very front. And there are only 5 ingredients, and they're listed there. And in fact, they'll tell you exactly how many dates and how many almonds, and there's absolutely no rubbish associated with it. And so these are some of the tactics that organizations are starting to play in order to be able to move to the forefront of what consumers are looking for. So how are you building trust and transparency into your process? How are you incorporating the new system of trust? Do you even know what your reputation is? Are you tracking that? It's a call for all of us. Okay, the second one is regenerative design. And this is a little bit more about sustainability, but it's about designing specifically for that. Now, what if, or imagine a world where food tastes great, is good for you, and it's good for the planet. Now, why would we even care? We even care because we're going to have somewhere between 9 and 10 billion people on the planet between now and 2050. And in addition, 1/3 of all food, somewhere between the growing process and the process of it being in a consumer's home, is wasted. 1/3. We've now tipped the balance in terms of consumers being overnourished versus undernourished around the world. And we have a big problem on our hands as an industry that we need to address. Why would we even care about the planet? Why is that so important? Because consumers care. Consumers care a lot. And when you start to Google things like mindfulness about food, you can see the trend going up significantly over time. This is something that matters to the heart of the consumer. So it's going to need to matter to us. It's going to need to change what it is that we do. Now, we've been doing this for a long time. We're pretty good at it. Think about the cheese manufacturing process. We separate the curds and the whey, and we use the whey for other things because it seems valuable. But what if we could take some of the side streams and the waste streams of our current production processes? What if we could analyze them and find out where the value was for them? Maybe that's possible. So here's Faber water. Has anybody heard of Farbonnaise in the UK? And this is a product where they've taken the water that Faber beans are stored in, and they've realized that actually it contains very high protein. What if we could take the water for that and create a new product, which is the Farbonnaise? Very interesting. It was a waste stream, and they took it and created value. Now, what about regrained? The grains that are discarded at the end of the beer manufacturing process. This startup created regrained the bars, which are very high in protein, very, very good source of energy, and they're using spent grains and creating value from them. Something that was a waste stream or a side stream now becomes the primary part of the plate. Or how about banana? So over 56% of bananas are ruined or destroyed somewhere between the growing process and it arriving in the supermarket. It's a very, very labor-intensive and high-waste industry. So a startup took those products or took the waste from banana and created snacks from it. So a waste stream now becomes the primary vehicle to deliver food to the consumer. So what are you doing from a waste stream? How are you looking at your waste streams? Are you even looking at them? And is there value in the things that you're simply going down the drain? Now, in sustainability, there's a rise in what we would call plant-based movement. And if you did come to the IFF booth, you may have tasted some of the products from our Plant Forward program, or our Reimagine Protein program. And this is a product on the screen that is revolutionized the US market from a meat standpoint. Now, this particular burger product is completely plant-based. Completely plant-based. It's based off pea protein primarily. Now, it looks like a regular burger perhaps to you. When you cook it on a barbecue or a grill, it actually bleeds just like meat. It sizzles just like meat does when you put it on a grill. And it smells just like meat. It tastes, it smells, it cooks, everything just like meat. And yet, it is 100% plant-based. This organization is so confident they actually distribute, or they put their products in the supermarket with all of the other meat. Not in some vegetarian section, but in the meat section. So you can select it. It's a very interesting product. It's backed by Bill Gates and a number of other celebrities as well. Leonardo DiCaprio invested in this particular startup as well. So what are we doing with the whole shift and change? We know milk generally and primarily comes from a cow, right? Right? Does it? How is this movement towards plant-based milks and the rise of consumers? Now, we may know that the protein in plant-based milks may not be exactly the full protein. It may not have all of the amino acids, but the consumer is listening to people online, they're listening to social media mavens, and they're developing and designing their own story about plant-based movements. And maybe, just maybe, in the future it won't be plant-based at all. Maybe it will come from another source, like the Pacific cockroach. Because there's research being done right now on the brood sac of the Pacific cockroach and the fact that it's sustained release protein that is a higher value than comes from a cow. Now there's a big ick factor that needs to be moved beyond, of course. But we need to be looking at how we're going to feed the world when we get to 2050. It's a big change. And whether we agree with it or not, cellular agriculture, or meat grown in laboratories, is a very real industry within the US particularly. And there's a very large movement towards cellular agriculture and the fact that we potentially will be able to eat meat that isn't produced from a cow. So, what are your regenerative opportunities? Are you looking at your side streams and your waste streams? Are you listening to the consumer when it comes to the plant forward movement? Because many people are. Sensory renaissance. How many senses do we have? A couple? And what if all of our food was Instagrammable? You know, in a world where the millennials say, if I didn't take a photo of it, maybe it never happened. Maybe I never ate it. But what if all of our experiences were Instagrammable? And in a movement with millennials that are saying it's more important for me to have an experience than to have things, because I can't Instagram my things, but I can Instagram my experiences that I have. And it's much cooler to take a picture of an experience that I'm having and make everybody else on social media look like I'm having fun than it is to take a picture of my new shoes or my new handbag. So how many senses do we have? I think somebody said there were 5. I think in one of the last presentations. Is that a general consensus? 5 senses? Sight, smell, help me out here, touch, taste, feel. So, New Scientist magazine says absolutely not. There are no more than 5 senses. There are now 21 senses. Because it isn't just enough for us to smell and taste. We need to feel it. We need to experience things in a way we never have before. And the millennials are driving this. They are driving the Instagrammable moment. They are driving the shift towards having experiences and fun moments. We're living for the moments. This is an interesting restaurant in Singapore that we were working with. They don't have a menu as you would normally see a traditional menu, a reading menu. Instead, what they do is they give you a little strip and you smell it and you go, that's the dish I want. How many of you have been in a restaurant, you've all been eating together and then the food comes out and you have food envy and you say, I really wish I had have ordered what they ordered. This kind of takes that away because now you smell it and you say, that's the dish I want. Not based on a description, but based on a different sense, your sense of smell. And your sense of smell is so powerful, the receptors that you have for smell are so closely linked in your brain to your memory receptors. And so for us to smell something and be transported in time is a very powerful thing. Or the Museum of Ice Cream. For those of you who maybe had the privilege of diving into a pool of sprinkles, it's about immersing yourself in a completely different experience. So Instagrammable, the most Instagrammed museum in the world. So what's your brand and your product's sensorial experience look like? Do you know? What does your packaging feel like? What does it sound like when people call your office? Have we even thought about it? Because for the millennials and the generations coming after us care about these things. Augmented self. Okay, so how many of us think our bodies can speak to us? What if our bodies could tell us what it is that they needed? Many of you think your bodies already can speak to you, and many of us have got tracking devices. Check the person next to you. How many people are wearing a Fitbit or something like that they're tracking steps? Have a look around. A few of you. Well, we've moved beyond just the Fitbit because now it's getting smaller. I know for many of you, I'm wearing a ring that checks my stress level. It's probably a little high right now. But we're moving from big things to small things. And things that potentially could even go under our skin, but we're also moving into food from an augmented self. So this is from a Kickstarter program. It's a pair of chopsticks called the Baidu chopsticks, and you use the chopsticks. This is in China, and you use these chopsticks across the course of your day. So you use them at breakfast and at lunch, and imagine by about 2 o'clock the chopsticks start to vibrate and go, a little bit too much fat. Stop that. You haven't really had enough greens yet. So just like your Fitbit buzzes at you, imagine the chopsticks buzzing at you. Kind of embarrassing if you're in the middle of a meal with a group of people. But this is the way that the augmented self is shifting. And Samsung and Nestle entered into an agreement in 2017 around the digital health project. So what if you could get a little signal or a buzz on your phone or on an app, which gives you an early indication of, well, maybe I'm dehydrated. Perhaps I've got low levels of magnesium. Or maybe even better than that, maybe an early warning or signal of a disease or a problem that might be taking shape in my body. Are we ready for this? As an industry, are we ready to tackle the challenges that this would bring to us? And what if we don't just take a selfie, but what if we could take a smellfie? What if we could send digitally the smells of the food or the smells or the tastes of the experiences that we're having? Because for the millennial, this is amazing. So this is a term I just coined, a smellfie. So you heard it here first, okay? Just so you all know. So imagine if you could take a picture of the food and then when you post that on Instagram, you also get the full entire experience. It's entirely possible. So the University of Singapore is creating and have got a project team. They've been able to send lemonade across the wire. So they're able to send the taste and the smell and everything of lemonade across into somebody from the next room. How are you connecting? What does that look like for your organization? Are you getting ready for the consumers of the future? And the last one, which is customization. So imagine a world where food is as customized as the people who eat it. I'm not just talking about customizing your packaging. So Coke did an incredible job in a number of countries around the world where they created names on the pack so you could go find your Coke and have that experience yourself. So I'm not just talking about that, but remember the last time you went out for dinner and everybody at the table had a different need. Maybe one was vegetarian and someone was vegan, somebody had a dairy allergy, somebody didn't like shellfish or was allergic to it. This is the challenge we're facing. And everybody has different needs. Now imagine that you could take your DNA and you could determine what it was that you were sensitive to or allergic to, or even what your preferences might have been if you didn't really understand them. This is now all entirely possible for about $199 online. Very, very easy. And what if we took it to the next step and said, not only can we analyze what's happening in our bodies and we can tell what it is that our bodies need, but what if we could in fact subscribe to a meal service that delivered those meals straight to our homes? And this is exactly what Habit have done. So they analyze your genetic DNA, they analyze that, and they say, this is the kind of food your body needs specifically. And then they send you the meals. So you're all set. This isn't science fiction. This is stuff that is real. It's happening today. And what if you could have a product in your kitchen called a Foodini, which, by the way, is on pre-orders at the moment, that could 3D print whatever it is that you wanted. So you come home from work, you're kind of tired, and you've connected it up to your DNA and your microbiome, so this Foodini knows exactly what your needs for your body are, but it doesn't necessarily think about what you feel like. What do I feel like today? And so it will help to prepare a product for you. So how could you build customization into your process? Are you thinking about the need for personalization and customization of products? Or are you still mass producing and expecting everybody to want the same thing? Because the world is changing. So these are key signals that we've seen, and I wanted to throw out as a challenge to us as an industry, because consumers are changing at a pace never seen before. It's very, very fast, and we need to see some of these nuances and examples of where it is shifting. And perhaps you're a skeptic. Perhaps you've looked at some of the things that I've been sharing and said, that's not possible. That's not even going to be a reality, Karen. Well, perhaps. I don't have the crystal ball, but I have the signs and the signals. And we're listening to consumers, and I would encourage you to do so as well. Because it's only when we listen to the consumer and we track the nuances of how things are going to shift that we will be able to innovate relevant products for the future consumer. Thank you very much. Are there questions? Well, that was easy. You can contact me afterwards. It's not a problem. I will be here for a little while. You can also come by the IFF booth and come into our experience room. I'd encourage you to do so if you haven't already, and take a little sneak peek at the food of the future for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. No questions means we really understood this. It was a fantastic presentation, and Karen, I would like to say to you that it's extremely clear to me, and I hope it's clear to the audience as well, that the future of food is in experiences, it's in personalization, it's in customization, and we have kind of heard that it's also probably in the ultimate convenience for consumers. So that's where it lies. And beyond a doubt, let's just start thinking of the implications of plant-based substitutes, dairy alternatives, and animal protein alternatives will start having in the food and beverage manufacturing industry. Okay, with that, I would like to sort of bring a close to the first half of the day today, but there are some exciting topics coming up after this, and let me just share them with you. After this networking coffee break, we're going to talk about unfolding the health and wellness revolution within the food and beverage industry. We will definitely be talking about fresh foods and sustainability. We'll be having a panel discussion on discussing ingredients and the role they have in your products. We'll be touching upon clean labels and health and safety. We have speakers from Nielsen, Nestle Food Products Company, Arctia, IFF, Pure Harvest, and Tropical Food Company right after this break. So with this, let's move to a 20-minute break. If we can all be back in this room at 12:20 after coffee. Thank you very much, and let's give a big hand to all of us.